Thank you, Andrew, and hello and welcome to all to today's forum and debate. We'll begin by running through the debate rules. Candidates will have 2 minutes for opening statements, and then we'll run through 8 questions. The candidates have been provided the debate topics ahead of time, but not the questions themselves. One candidate will respond with a 2-minute answer. The other will provide a 1-minute-long rebuttal. And finally, we'll conclude this morning with closing statements. Those will be 2 minutes each. And to determine the speaking order, we'll do a coin flip and then alternate between the candidates. I'll try to keep track of that. With that said, let's welcome Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt to the stage. And next, Senior Deputy District Attorney Nathan Vasquez. I have a regular penny here for the coin flip. As the incumbent, D.A. Schmidt, I will ask you to call, and then you'll be able to determine the winner of the flip. We'll be able to determine what order they would like to go in. So here we go.
Heads.
Heads. All right, come on. And it is tails. So, Mr. Vasquez, you get to pick whether you would like to go first or second.
I will let the elected DA start.
Okay. Let's get this started. First question.
You gonna do opening statements, Kevin?
Yes. Let's do the opening statements. And, of course, D.A. Schmidt, you go first.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the Metro Chamber for having us today. Thank you to Coin News for streaming this and to everybody who's tuning in at home. On May 21st, we have a really important decision to make about how we want to move forward in our county or go backwards. Our challenges are very real. I've focused my first term on taking action to address these challenges. Measure 110 wasn't working, so I got to work with the legislature on passing new laws to bring funding for a 24-hour drop-off center to Multnomah County to address public drug use on our streets. I've partnered with law enforcement to launch an auto theft task force, and now in 2023, auto theft is down 25.5%. The NRA historically has blocked our ability to study gun violence for decades. But I partnered with OHSU to study gun violence locally like the public health issue and emergency that it is. My opponent, on the other hand, is bought and paid for by NRA champion Machine Gun Betsy Johnson and her Rolodex. If Trump gets reelected, I will stand up for abortion rights, and I will stand up against MAGA extremists. My opponent, on the other hand, takes their money. His vision for the role is outdated and narrow. His big idea on drugs is to bring back the old failed community court model that Multnomah County judges rejected years ago. Meanwhile, I've been working on building treatment and diversion programs that we need today and into the future. I've consistently increased the budget of the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, and every year that I've been the district attorney, prosecution rates have increased, and now they're at 7- and 8-year highs. This morning, you're going to hear a lot of talk from my opponent, but he's right that we're facing real challenges. It's just the old ideas that are wrong. I'm focused on moving us forward, and I look forward to telling you how we can make things better in the conversation. Thank you.
Mr. Vasquez, opening statement.
Well, first, of course, I'd like to start by saying thank you so much for being here and for listening to this very important conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a prosecutor for 23 years now. And that means that I've had the opportunity, the privilege, and the honor to work in every facet of that office. I've handled thousands of misdemeanors. I've dealt with domestic violence. I've dealt with juvenile prosecution, property crimes, robberies, gang violence. I spent 3 years in our child abuse team. And I've spent the last decade working on the most complex murder cases in our county. I'm the only candidate before you that has ever prosecuted a murder case. I'm the only candidate before you that's prosecuted a rape case. I'm the only candidate before you that has done any serious felony trial. But there's more than that. I'm a father. I'm raising my 2 children in this community. And I'm also a husband to an amazing wife who dedicates her life to serving victims of trauma and to counseling those survivors. I'm running to be DA because I love this community. And I know that we can be compassionate, and I know we can be compassionate and also actually hold people accountable. Sadly, under Mike Schmidt, our community has become unsafe. His failed policies, his mismanagement, and his broken partnerships have resulted in record homicides, record car thefts, record traffic deaths, record overdose deaths, and really record crime across the board under his watch. I know we can move forward, but we need a new leader, and that leader is before you, someone that has the experience to bring us back, to put us forward into a safer community that we all can enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Opening question here. Since 2009, Multnomah County has seen historic increases in crime, most acutely homicides, vehicle theft, and retail theft, larceny. The latest data shows that overall crime has dropped about 20%, but it still remains above pre-pandemic levels. What has led to the recent downward trend in overall crime, and how do we continue to reduce crime rates? Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Ken. You know, there's no doubt that we face one of the most challenging periods in Multnomah County and Portland's history. As across the nation, the COVID pandemic really rocked cities. It caused anxiety to spike. The isolation caused mental health challenges, caused substance use disorder and addiction. And at the exact same time, and at a very awful moment, fentanyl came roaring into our community. So we've had a lot of challenges over the past 3.5 years, starting with gun violence. You know, for gun violence, I'm a prosecutor, and our office is by necessity reactive. An arrest, crime happens, an arrest is made, and then we prosecute the suspect. And that's what we do, and I've reorganized my office to form the first ever homicide unit in Multnomah County's history. So now we have a group of dedicated and our most experienced prosecutors partnering with law enforcement to go out on those very important cases. But we know that we have to also focus on crime prevention. And that's why we've partnered with OHSU in a historic partnership that's not existed before to have a homicide review committee. And we've got people from all over the public sector. We've got epidemiologists, we've got teachers, religious leaders, we've got law enforcement. We're in the rooms and we're studying what's happened here in Multnomah County and were there opportunities to make interventions. When it came to catalytic converter thefts, we partnered with State Senator Chris Gorsuch and we got the law changed. And so we made it so that you can no longer sell a catalytic converter without a VIN number and without proof of ownership. Auto theft, we partnered with Portland Police in their stolen vehicle operations, and we added a prosecutor and an investigator, and now we have a task force and auto theft rates are down 25%. When it's retail theft, we partnered with the Attorney General. We got the law changed. We strengthened and gave prosecutors more tools to hold people accountable, and in Multnomah County, we've trained over 375 loss prevention officers. And most recently, I went down to the legislature and partnered on fixing Measure 110. Because we can all know that that was not working, and what we need is the drop-off center here in Multnomah County, which I'm excited we're bringing.
Time. Mr. Vasquez, your response.
Let's be clear about Mike Schmidt's legacy. He was a huge proponent of Measure 110 and the failed policies that it brought all of us. He was the cheerleader who said very specifically that he wanted to decriminalize those hard drugs like fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine. Let's be clear. When he ran in 2020, his whole platform was around suspending, reducing, and overall just dropping prosecutions. His very first effort as a DA was to come forward and tell the community all the things he wasn't going to prosecute. His first budget was to reduce felony property crimes by 40%. That's who Mike Schmidt is. When we look at that, what has been the result? It has been rampant crime, unchecked graffiti, unchecked homicide rates. These are his legacy. This is what he's brought you. The only question is he ever going to take responsibility for all of these massive problems that we're seeing in our community because of his failed policies?
Question number 2. Data shows that Multnomah County continues to have a remarkably low case resolution rate, 48%. That's the lowest in the state, far below the goal of 90%. What do you see as the main causes of this extremely low closure rate, and how will you improve this as district attorney in the next 4 years? Mr. Vasquez, you get this question first.
Well, this is an interesting one because oftentimes you don't hear Mike Schmidt talk about resolution rate because it is his failed policies and the broken partnerships that have led us to this place. What Schmidt talks about are issuance rates because he wants to use smoke and mirrors to really mislead all of you here in this public. What we've experienced and what we know is this high crime rate and then very low resolution rate. And it's what we feel and what we see every day on the streets when we're out walking around our beautiful city. Now, this breakdown, and when we talk about his misleading stats, what it is this. He tries to say, well, I only issue the cases that come in, and it is really just, I'm issuing at such an amazing high rate. So issuance means when you file criminal charges. But let's look at that reality. Before Mike Schmidt, we were handling over 12,000 cases a year. Now, under Mike Schmidt, we're doing less than 6,000 at times under him. And further, what you're hearing is only 48% resolution rate. These are failed policies and failed management. Mike Schmidt is here to tell you with his smoke and mirrors about these issuance rates. And, you know, it reminds me a lot of one of my favorite movie quotes that, you know, where he says, 60% of the time it works every time. But here it's not working at all. When we talk about this, you'll hear a lot, Mr. Schmidt will talk about, well, I'm just the catcher and the police are the pitcher. And he presents this very passive approach to criminal justice. It's one in which this is why. When you put out to everyone that you're not going to prosecute, guess what? They're not going to be throwing the ball to you. You cannot be passive. You must be active and get out into the community and actually work on crime. So the real question is, when is he going to step up and start working on crime?
Mr. Schmidt, your rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you. So to go back to the question, closure rates is a real challenge in Multnomah County. But that's why you need a systems thinker, because the prosecutor is one part of the system, but clearly my opponent doesn't understand that there are other parts of the system. But let me talk to you about what I've done in the district attorney's office. Since I started, I've increased our budget by 30%. We've added 27 new prosecutors from where we were when I started. And so what does that mean? That means that we've gotten back from the historic lows that we were at when I took over, and now my prosecutors' caseloads are lower. The work is spread out more evenly across the office, so we can spend more time on cases. That's why my opponent wants to talk about my issuance rates, and I should say they're our issuance rates because it's the attorneys in my office that are doing the work. But here's one of the big system problems. We don't have public defenders to defend the cases. The legislature needs to fix this issue. Judges every week are dismissing cases. How can we resolve cases if we don't have public defenders? The legislature needs to step in and do its job.
Thank you very much. You both supported the changes made to Measure 110 that the legislature recently approved in HB 4002. Was there anything in the bill that you disagreed with or believe was missed? And how will you help lead the way in curbing the explosion of addiction and public use of hard drugs in our county over the next 4 years?
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt.
So, my top priorities, look, it was clear to everybody that what was promised in Measure 110 was not delivered and it wasn't working on our streets. So when I started partnering with legislators last summer, the first thing I talked about was putting an end to open drug use. So that was a key takeaway for me, or a take-home goal of this new legislation. We also need to make it easier and give prosecutors more tools to prosecute drug dealers. That's why we fought for a fix in the statute that allows us to prosecute them. It's called a Boyd-Hubble fix. But it's a fix that allows us to prosecute drug dealers. We got that. But let's also be clear. We need treatment for people that are suffering. Just arresting people, putting them in jail, and hoping that things change is not going to work. So that's why I partnered with the legislature, and when we were in the short session, I was one of the few people in the room negotiating this bill. And we got a $25 million promise from them that they're going to invest in a drop-off center for law enforcement to take people to suffering on the streets. That's a game changer. That's something that law enforcement on the front lines have been asking for decades, and now we're finally bringing it home. So if this is going to work and things are going to get better, the biggest thing that has to happen is that the treatment resources have to be available. When somebody is taken off the streets and given the option with deflection, which is part of the bill, they have to actually be giving a meaningful resource. If we don't have that, if the state and the city and the county can't come together and get that drop-off center formed and have the treatment to back it up, then this isn't going to work any better than Measure 110 did. So the one thing that I have about the bill is just the critical need to actually make sure that that treatment hits our streets and that people can get the help that they need. That's how we'll make a change.
Mr. Vasquez.
Once again, I want to point you to Mr. Schmidt is misleading you with smoke and mirrors. Who brought us Measure 110? This is a shining example of Mike Schmidt's failed policies. In 2020, he was the mouthpiece for this. He was the one that was out there. When we say about the promises, he was the one making the promises. He is the one that brought us this rampant open-air drug use. He's the one that brought us drug dealers just wildly and freely dealing drugs on the streets with his policy. He's been not just out there speaking about it, been taking money from the dark money groups that brought it to us. And it's shocking to hear him here today to say that he's been working all along to see it change, when just last month he took $30,000 from the Drug Policy Alliance, the people that have been saying all along and say to this very day, absolutely, we must not criminalize hard drugs like heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. When is he ever going to take accountability and stop making excuses for his failed policies?
Next question. There has been a visible public rift between the Portland Police Bureau and the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office over the last 4 years. What do you believe caused this rift, and how will you strengthen collaboration between the District Attorney's Office and all public safety agencies over the next 4 years? Mr. Vasquez.
There's a very clear cause for that rift, and it's standing right next to me. Mike Schmidt broke that partnership 100% immediately when he took office. On the other hand, for the past 20 years, I have dedicated my career to collaboration, working with not only community organizations, but with law enforcement to bring forth real solutions to public safety. And collaboration starts with showing up and building partnerships. What you have here is someone that refuses to even come out into the basic neighborhoods and meet with neighborhood groups. Mike Schmidt has repeatedly told neighborhood groups that he won't come out and talk to them. He's tried to shut me down from speaking at public safety forums and neighborhood groups because he is someone who likes to break those partnerships. His first act as DA was to 100% destroy the relationship with Portland Police. He told them loud and clear that he didn't value them with his protest policy. He told them loud and clear that they were second class. And they left in droves, sadly. And oftentimes in those exit interviews, what did they cite? Mike Schmidt. These were some of the finest police officers we had. There were multiple friends of mine that left, not retired, literally just up and left. Some of them were just a few years away from retirement and left because of Mike Schmidt. It's shocking that Chief Lavelle had to go out and write a memo just last year to say, hey, stop telling our everyday business folks, our victims, that the DA's office, Mike Schmidt, isn't going to prosecute. That's how broken he has done with our partnership with law enforcement. After 3 years of this Schmidt style of collaboration and partnership, why does every first responder, every union out there, why do they all endorse me? It's because there's one clear choice. First responders trust me. I will build that partnership back. They do not trust Mike Schmidt.
Mr. Schmidt, your rebuttal.
Mr. Vasquez forgets that he was on the stage with me announcing that protest policy. He doesn't want to remind you of that. He didn't bring up those objections then, but now he has revisionist history. Listen, police and district attorneys are separate agencies and institutions for a reason. They need to be. We have separate responsibilities. We have separate roles. We do need to collaborate. But there also needs to be checks and balances between the agencies to have legitimacy in our public safety system. So look, when I talk about collaboration, I think the results are what speaks for itself. Over the last 3 years, our prosecution rates keep going up. I've gone down. I went on a ride-along with police on New Year's Eve night and did street takeovers on those missions. After that, I went down to Salem and got them $100,000 so they can do 10 more takeover missions over the next year. That's the type of collaboration that's going, and we're making good things happen and working together.
The Portland Metro Chamber is a long call for Multnomah County District Attorney's Office to bring the number of prosecutors up to the national standard. For our county's population size, that should be about 120 prosecutors. That's according to the National District Attorneys Association. A report commissioned by the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office found that the DA's office should have 109 attorneys. Last year, the DA's office was about 25% understaffed, and its own data shows historically high caseloads per attorney. What will you do in the next 4 years to bring staffing closer to the national standard? Mr. Schmidt.
This has been a major focus of my tenure, and I couldn't appreciate the Chamber's support for this more than I do. So just to put this in perspective for you, I began in the Multnomah County DA's office as an intern in 2007. At that time, we had approximately 100 prosecuting attorneys in our office. So still not to the national standards, but about 100. When I took over from DA Underhill after he resigned in the middle of the protests, we had 72. That's 72 budgeted positions, not vacancies, budgeted. Today, I'm proud to say we have 97 prosecutors in our agency. We're not up to the national standards, but I've reversed almost 15 years of divestment from our office in just 3.5 years. And that matters. It matters because that means that the caseloads are spread out more. We can focus more on different things that we're working on, like auto theft, like homicides, like the retail theft task force that we're doing. Having the prosecutorial resources that we need are absolutely vital for us to be able to do our work in public safety. These are results that have not been delivered in the last 15 years. And how do you do that? You do that with collaboration. No individual can do it by themselves. It takes a system. You have to have good partnerships with leaders, because guess who doesn't control the district attorney's budget? The district attorney, right? You got to work with the county commission. You got to work with the legislature. You got to work with the city. I've gotten funding from all of those entities, from other organizations like TriMet. I know some folks from TriMet are in the room. We have a contract. So it's putting together and adding as many of those resources that you can. That's the key to building things back. And finally, we're getting closer to where we need to be, but those relationships will continue with me as the district attorney. We'll continue to see growth in our office. And I've also added and almost tripled our investigative resources, which means that we can collaborate with police officers to close more cases.
Mr. Vasquez.
You know, I bet all of us sitting in this room here, they have a boss that loves to take credit for everyone else's work. And that's what you've got with Mike Schmidt. You know, let's look at some of those positions that have been added. The MAPS program, there was 4 attorneys that were added with that program. I wrote that program. That was mine. That was my idea. I put that together. You know, when we talk about collaboration, we added a deputy DA out at the Port of Portland, an absolutely groundbreaking collaborative effort. That was my effort for 5 years to put that together. When we talk about the TriMet position, amazing position. We added a new one. Guess what? That wasn't actually my effort. That was Julian Samuels in my office, a young man who does great work. But again, what you're seeing is that you have a boss that likes to take credit for other people's work, but in reality, this is a team pulling forward, and we do need more efforts. What you haven't heard is that Mike Schmidt actually turned down efforts from your community to add 2 prosecutors, one to downtown, one throughout the community. He specifically said that he would not engage in that collaborative effort with the business community.
Time. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Next question. It has been reported that the District Attorney's Office staff surveys have consistently shown high levels of staff dissatisfaction, high levels of staff turnover. What do you believe are the main contributing factors to these high levels of dissatisfaction, according to the surveys? And what would you do to improve morale in the DA's office over the next 4 years? Mr. Vasquez.
Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. Mike Schmidt has destroyed the morale in the DA's office, absolutely destroyed it. He's devastated it. There's been 3 separate gender discrimination claims by women in our office directly against him. And wait, I'm going to pause for a moment because if you all open up your phone to the Oregonian, there's a 4th one out there today. When does it end? This is unacceptable. Of course there's a morale issue. Of course there is. You can certainly make excuses and blame other people, Mr. Schmidt, but when are you going to take accountability? When are you going to look in and say, there is a problem? How many discrimination claims have to come forward? This isn't some political game. It's not an issue that somehow I have created. This is actually years throughout his time at this office that we have seen woman after woman after woman come forward to say, there's a problem. They're raising their hand, and they're pointing at Mike Schmidt. To be clear, we've lost. What happens? We've lost 50% of the attorneys in our office. 50% have walked out the door. That's a ton of experience. These aren't retirements. These are people leaving because morale is so bad. We've done multiple surveys on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The results, if you care to dig into them and look at them, they're horrific. We did a pulse survey. That means one that was done after the first. They didn't get better. It continued to get worse. Just this past January, 5 attorneys walked out the door. Young, a lot of young attorneys, great skill, left because of this morale issue, because of Mike Schmidt. What happened? Why did the employees, why the attorneys, why did they vote to endorse me? I think the answer is extremely clear. Because Mike Schmidt's destroyed that morale, and he's created this terrible work environment.
Time. Mr. Schmidt, your rebuttal.
That was a very nice, contrived moment for the Oregonian to suddenly have something today from one of your supporters. That's interesting. Look, the reason morale's been tough is probably the same reason that it's been tough in all of your industries over the pandemic. It has been hard. When I got started with 72 prosecutors, caseloads were at an all-time high. We weren't resolving the cases. That's hard on prosecutors who are trying to do the work. So, things have been challenging. At the highest point during the pandemic, our staff turnover rate for prosecutors was 18%. That was the highest point. In 2023, it was 6%. So don't buy into the hype that Mr. Vasquez is trying to point and paint for you. Look, I'll just read you a quote from one of those equity surveys. And by the way, you wouldn't even have those equity surveys if I wasn't asking the questions. This is the first time our office has ever been surveyed on these issues. We knew it was going to be hard, but here's the quote. The equity director is absolutely excellent and his work matters, but it's just one person pushing against a culture that goes back decades, and it's not fair to him or realistic to expect that the ship will have turned around in such a short period of time. That's from the equity survey. This is hard work. We knew it was going to be hard, but I'm willing to do hard work.
Time, sir. What is the one innovative proposal or policy that you want to implement over the next 4 years that you believe will improve public safety here in Multnomah County? Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, so I've talked a lot about the things that we've done, and I've gone from issue to issue to issue, whether it's gun violence, auto theft, catalytic converters, retail theft, but I still think that there's more that we can do. So one big idea that I have is to continue to see how we can collaborate locally with our service providers. I got to go down to San Diego and see what they're doing with homelessness in their city and in the criminal justice system. We all know homelessness is a huge challenge here for us in Portland. And their district attorney's doing some innovative things. So what we did is we came back, and now we're engaging with service providers. We're right now writing up memorandums of understandings so that when people engage, when they walk through the front door of Central City Concern or any of the other agencies that are working with folks, they'll have criteria. They'll have things for people to work on. And if that's addiction, if that's their issue, if it's mental health, or if it's job training, housing, whatever it is that they're working on, if they work on those things, then that service provider is going to write me a letter as the district attorney. And they're going to say, Mike, this individual is working hard and they're advancing through the program. But there are some things that are holding them back from housing, holding them back from getting that job that's going to make a difference, holding them back from getting their driver's license so they can go to work. And so as long as they're engaging in these programs, what we've seen in San Diego, which is a program that's been in existence for decades, is that when people do those things and we help reduce those barriers, that they can actually move forward with their lives. And that's good for public safety and it's good for homelessness. And I think the other big thing that we're going to be working on a lot is domestic violence. We're proud to be selected as one of 2 or 3 sites in the country for a survivor-centered domestic violence program. And I want to go and look at, some of you I got to go to Nashville and Milwaukee with. They are leading the way in this area, and Multnomah County needs to follow their lead and do a lot more work for domestic violence survivors.
Mr. Vasquez.
What we just heard was nothing about how we could actually start to get our arms around the out-of-control crime rates that we're experiencing. What I'm going to bring you is the future of prosecution, how we're going to do things in a much more efficient, effective manner. Strategic prosecution is 100% the future of how we should be doing criminal prosecution here in Multnomah County and around the United States. Other offices have adopted it. Mike Schmidt has been repeatedly offered that idea and has funded it at the level of 1.5 attorneys. You're looking at 1. This, with strategic prosecution under my administration, I'm going to put it in every single unit. It's going to be in the domestic violence unit, the gang unit, juvenile, the property crimes, robbery, felony assaults. And what that is and what that means is that we use data, combine that with a data analyst and a prosecutor, and we deliver smart, effective, and very focused prosecutions to deal with those individuals, first by identifying the ones that are causing the most issues in our community and actually dealing with them.
Time. Thank you very much. County residents look to the district attorney as one of our strongest public safety leaders. How do you view the leadership role of the district attorney, and how will you serve in that leadership role in the next 4 years? Mr. Vasquez.
Being a leader starts with having the respect and the trust of the employees you are elected to lead. My office has spoken loud and clear. They've endorsed me to be the next DA in Multnomah County. On one hand, you have an office full of attorneys hungry for change. They've spoken clearly. They want to see a new leader. On the other hand, employees have raised their hand high to point out very clearly and loudly repeated instances of discrimination and retaliation that's completely unacceptable and is not at all what we should be looking for in the next leader of the district attorney's office. The other important thing about a leader is that leaders listen and they show up, even in the hard times. Mike Schmidt spent most of his time out there not leading from the front, but from the back office, or sadly, oftentimes, going out to national conferences and not really paying attention to the issues that were happening here. He refuses to come to neighborhood meetings, to listen to those neighbors, to listen to our citizens, our people. He tries to shut down public forums. Throughout my career, I've prided myself in always showing up, even on the hard conversations, with leading from the front, handling the most complex cases. What type of leader, during years where we had record homicides, didn't take a single case, didn't bother to handle one of those important cases in our community? That's Mike Schmidt.
Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to borrow a quote from Dolly Parton. We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. I think that's what leadership's about. Look, when I ran, I wanted to talk about, reform and working on the things that systemically people in this community were calling for. And then I became the district attorney at one of the biggest crises in our county's history. And we've had challenge after challenge. But for every single challenge, we've collaborated and built together solutions, whether it's gun violence, working with OHSU and police, whether it's auto theft, whether it's catalytic converters, whether it's retail theft. Every single challenge that's faced our community, and most recently, working with the legislature to fix Measure 110 so that we can move forward, still get people connected to treatment, and bring a $25 million drop-off site to our community. These are the things that I've done, and I think that's what a leader needs to do. There are always going to be crises. There are always going to be issues. You need somebody who can show that they can work together to address the biggest challenges facing our community.
We now have time for closing candidate remarks. You have 2 minutes each. Mr. Vasquez begins.
I want to start by placing us where we sit here today. So here today in Portland, we've had 16 homicides. This makes us, sadly, the leader on the West Coast per capita for homicides. We have more homicides than Seattle, San Francisco, and San Diego combined. But I'm here today to tell you Portland's best days are ahead of us if we elect the right leader. We're at a critical time in Portland's history. A time for change is now. We've endured 3 years under Mike Schmidt with rampant crime, unchecked open-air drug use, drug dealing, smashed windows, businesses fleeing. The Portland Metro Chamber's own survey says that people at the level of 80% are afraid to come downtown to our beautiful city, all under Mike Schmidt. There are 2 paths before you. Schmidt's path is lined with discrimination, failed policies, rampant crime. What you see and feel, that is real. Don't be gaslit by him. What you're experiencing, what your friends and neighbors are feeling, it's happening, and it needs to change. My path offers hope, safety through collaboration, and actual, real experience handling prosecution, doing the work that is this office to prosecute crimes. I'm asking you to join me on our collective journey as we build a compassionate justice system where accountability matters, where victims are valued, and where safety is for all, not just the few that Mike Schmidt selects. I know that the people that sit here before me, that you're working and dedicated towards this future. And I believe that working together, we can obtain it. I'm asking you to join me. Thank you so much.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Ken, for moderating, the Metro Chamber for hosting this debate, and the sponsors. And thank you to my opponent for taking part in this. Look, I'm a husband and I'm a father of 2 boys. My family lives right here in Southeast Portland. I love this community, and I want to see it emerge from the challenges the last few years stronger, safer, and healthier. As we all know, there have been real challenges in Portland. In the last 4 years, we've seen crime spike, and we've seen fentanyl hit the West Coast. We've seen gun violence take far too many lives, and we've seen our local businesses struggle with theft and vandalism. And again, when we saw those things happening during the pandemic, I said, what can I do? What can we do as an office? And we launched the new homicide unit, dedicated to more capacity of prosecuting violent crime in our community. We launched innovative new partnerships with OHSU because we gotta focus on crime prevention. You have to do crime prevention work, not just be reactive. Every problem in our community is not have a prosecutorial solution. We saw catalytic converter thefts rise a few years back, and I worked to pass that law that disrupted the illegal market for catalytic converter thefts. Today, they're down 57.2% according to Portland Police data. Now I'm working on launching a brand new diversion program to help survivors of domestic violence move forward. I'm building a new program to address homelessness, and we're going to partner with those service providers that I talked about to expunge people's records and reduce housing insecurity. I'm working to expand my step court diversion program, which is showing better success at rehabilitating offenders than jail time has and preventing future crimes. And I'm partnering with lawmakers and law enforcement to stop public drug use and connect people to treatment. We need steady leadership in the district attorney's office that can meet the challenges we face and move us forward. I'm the only person on the stage that's shown the ability to do that. There's more work to do. I'm ready to do it, so let's move forward together. Thank you.
That is the end of our forum and debate. Please give both candidates a round of applause. And to close out this breakfast forum, Andrew Hone from the Portland Metro Chamber is here to close us out.
Speaking of gratitude, let's give it up for our moderator, Ken Boddy. Extremely grateful for all of you for being here today, for the 2 candidates that have joined us, and let's give them one more big round of applause for putting themselves out there. We're going to also take a moment to acknowledge the media with us today. Thank you for joining us and shining a light on this critical race. We're going to give all of you time to interact with the candidates, with each other, ask those important questions, and then please, one more time, join me in thanking our sponsors, Alaska Airlines, the Portland Tribune, George Fox University, and U.S. Bank. And with that, thank you, and do not forget to vote.